hardware live stream. It's Friday, so hopefully everybody's having a good Friday, ending out on a positive, productive footing. We've got a few different products to go ahead and touch on for this week, including actually a new update in terms of a non-OC variant for our dual 4060 Ti in white. We've also actually got a couple of other updates in terms of monitors, where we've got a new upcoming ProArt series monitor, a 15.6-inch version as opposed to the current 14-inch version, along with some other really cool stuff like a multi-touch functionality, USB-C and HDMI, factory color calibration, the ASUS dial, a lot of really cool stuff there. We've got a new update for our ASUS ExpertWiFi series product, which is really cool if you're looking for really comprehensive coverage with up to 12 nodes, advanced VLAN management, smart captive portals, some other really cool stuff there. And also an update in terms of the ROGxEVANGELION product wave of releases, with I think one of the last items that we have in terms of the release, which will be the ROG STRIX Scope RX variant keyboard in both blue and red switches. So we'll touch on that. So overall, we've got a few different items to touch on. We've got some cool giveaways to go ahead and touch on as well. And also some other kind of just cool, I think, insights. I've got a little bit of kind of a primer on some recommendations for, I've seen some kind of users asking about kind of what might be some options if I'm finally kind of getting ready to make the jump into Wi-Fi 6, even though we've just started to launch our first Wi-Fi 7 product. For some of you out there, you might have not even made the jump over to Wi-Fi 6, or maybe you haven't jumped over to 2.5 gigabit networking. And we actually have a recent new model that we've entered in with the Tough Gaming AX6000, which is a really great price point for looking for a high performance Wi-Fi 6 router that also integrates 2.5 gigabit networking. So I'm actually going to have 4 models. I can give you a little bit of a breakdown, kind of like a good, better, best, and then kind of a little bit of a higher, even top solution for those you might want to be considering maybe that jump over to get to maybe a higher performing router that also has the ability to be expanded upon, because all of those models will support AI mesh. So we'll touch on that, and as always, your guys' questions and comments and feedback that you might have. So let's get ready to go ahead and jump into it. Let's see who we have joining us here on the stream. Kevin Daly's joining us. I'm on Wi-Fi 6E. Yep, yeah, I think Kevin, right? You're running one of the ROG Raptures, right? So he's definitely primed to have a very, very nice network. And also Kevin, I believe, is also running a bit of a 10G based setup, so he's definitely taking advantage of our higher end based product portfolio. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining us here on the stream as well. Sue Min, fantastic, man. Always great to have you here joining us on the stream. We've also got Chad joining us here. We've got Julian joining us. I like that ROGI logo. GPS Stuntman is joining us. Fantastic. We've got JC, the one, the only. Justin Chu, man, some absolutely brilliant stuff that you've been doing in terms of that modding on that Tough Gaming stuff that you showed me. Really brilliant. Erica joining us on the stream, letting us know the audio's sounding good. So fantastic. We've got Michael joining us as well. We've got Harid. Is that right? Hopefully I'm saying that right. Harid is also joining us as well. We've got the one, the only Canadian Grandmaster himself, Snuff Computer Design, also joining us. So everybody else is joining us here on the stream. Fantastic, man. Thanks so much. Let's get ready to go ahead and kick it off. So let's see what we've got in terms of just some quick updates. Quickly, just in terms of UEFI BIOS announcements, we don't have any like super critical UEFI BIOS announcements. Most of the releases that we've had this week are pretty much going to be a continuation of some essentially prior UEFI releases for the Socket 1700 platform, which are namely at enabling next generation Intel based series support. So that's going to be for pretty much Socket 1700 based motherboards. So we've pretty much rolled that out to all the Z series based motherboards. So that would include like current Z790, Z690 based motherboards, but also B and H series. And so we've kind of continued for the last few models, going down even into the more entry levels of series models that you're going to have for kind of B and H that are also seeing those updates. I'm not going to recap those motherboards because probably for most of you, you're probably not running that board if you're checking out this stream. Although I know that individuals like Kevin definitely actually can appreciate that. I've seen it definitely over the last few years that B and H series chipsets I think actually are really solid value for a lot of users because the overall core feature set and the functionality is really solid. You can get actually, multiple M.2, you can get improved audio, you have some nice ID designs, you can even get things like Wi-Fi and 2.5 gigabit networking on some of those models, but definitely much lower price points than Z-series chipset. And so really kind of the differentiation starts to come in is how many specialized functions and features or specialized spec do you want, and of course, do you want overclocking support? Although one of the cool things that Intel did do within the Socket 1700 platform is that they did enable DRAM based overclocking on, take for instance, like B series chipsets. So if you got something like a B660 or B760 based motherboard, you can still actually overclock the DRAM divider. So if you want to run 6400 memory, or if you want to get 6000 memory, or if you want to even run 7000 memory, it's actually possible on a B series chipset board. The main differential is that you can't overclock, of course, a K series based CPU support. So that's one of the differentiation points outside of some other elements. But if you have more questions on that, as always, I'd recommend checking out kind of our in-depth chipset launch live stream where we break down the difference between chipsets and also offer some clarity between kind of board segmentation, because it's not just the core chipset differential. More enthusiast functions and features will also be found on Z series based motherboards than you'll find on B series based motherboards. But if you're just looking for a stable and reliable basic system, B series definitely is, I think, actually a great option that sometimes is actually getting overlooked. All right, so that's going to cover us for those UEFI announcements. There's also a continuation of AMD AGESA 1.2.0. Yes, .B, which will be for predominantly actually for, I believe, AM4 based motherboards. And this is going to be rounding out, I think, more entry level chipsets and boards that are going to be utilizing the A520 based chipset. So if you guys are kind of aware in terms of AMD's AM4 chipset positioning, you're generally going to be looking at like X570, then like B550, B540, and then you would have like A520, right? So A520 definitely makes up the most kind of entry option, but similar to kind of those B series chipsets can still offer a solid foundation for, general productivity and definitely for basic gaming systems, especially if you don't need, like I said, as much kind of advanced feature or function or spec. So we have continued rolling out those UEFI releases again for those AM4 boards. And if you got one of the other AM4 boards, as I noted, with one of those chipsets, you've already received that UEFI and you could go to your support page, download it, and update it. But as always, make sure to consider checking out our FAQ guide that we have in our PCDIY group, which is linked in the description, if you have questions regarding what you want to keep in mind if you update your UEFI BIOS. All right. So that's just something to keep in mind there. Let me go ahead and just see is any quick questions right there. Kevin notes, says, I have an ROG Rapture and I picked up an AXE6600, love an ASUS AI mesh. Yeah, that's definitely sweet. One of the really great things is, we have, I think now over 30 models, right, with AI mesh. Allows you to essentially go ahead and mix and match, right? You can take another router, you can pair it up so that if you want to be able to have essentially more coverage, that's one of the great things. And we offer a lot of flexibility in what's called backhaul connectivity. And so the backhaul connectivity essentially just means how do you pair those two routers together? Traditionally within a router, you can usually use what's called a wireless backhaul. So if your router has like a dual band configuration, you would have like 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. You would lose generally, like, let's say like the 5 gigahertz band, and you would have the 2.4 gigahertz band be available to all your devices. If you had like a higher end router that was like a tri-band, then that's an advantage because now you can maintain two bands free and use another as a wireless backhaul. But on pretty much all of our AI mesh based routers, we also offer what's called a wired backhaul, which is really great if you can do it, because that means that you can actually connect the two routers via an Ethernet cable, even from like maybe floor to floor. So you can run it through your walls, and then you can actually keep all your bands available. So that even gives you actually more flexibility and more performance. So pretty cool. All right. Michael notes, is the next version Z? I can't talk about any essentially embargoed based chipset designs or anything along those lines. All I can tell you is just make sure to keep it tuned. We've already gone ahead and talked a little bit about Intel's next generation refresh, which we're aligning with in terms of our motherboard side, where we've already announced refresh models like the Z790 Dark Hero, of course our Tough Gaming, and our ROG STRIX series. And we'll have some more information coming in October. So just go ahead and just make sure to be following our social channels. You'll find out about more when it comes to the latest and greatest from Intel in the not too distant future. So just make sure to go ahead and keep it tuned. All right. So Sneff is asking us, did I hear something about another ROG motherboard? Maybe, maybe not. I'm just going to have to let you know. Make sure to keep it tuned to the channels. We're not done yet. We've got some really cool, exciting stuff coming down still for, let's say, Intel Next Gen. So that's all I'm going to go ahead and touch on. So just make sure to go ahead and keep it tuned right there. Interesting. We're getting some love. I haven't seen this in a while. Sonic Studio on ROG boards. Yeah, the Sonic Studio audio suite is pretty cool. It's actually available both on ROG Strix and ROG Maximus, or also inversely on Crosshair series motherboards on the AMD side. But that's a kind of our really comprehensive audio suite. It allows you to do a lot of really cool things in terms of having like a more advanced EQ. You can have application profiling where you can have different levels of audio customization or different profiles that's set to different games or apps, which is pretty cool. So if like you want to have something associated to your web browser versus then maybe something in Forza versus something in Overwatch versus something in Company of Heroes, you can actually do that. It's a pretty cool, flexible piece of software with a lot of functionality in there. Kevin notes, yeah, he's rocking a 2.5G wired backhaul. That would be pretty much the same way that I would recommend doing it, because you get that really, really nice increase in bandwidth for the two nodes, right? And that allows you to have a huge amount of bandwidth that you're providing to the wireless connection. So pretty sweet. Somebody asking about any update or announcements on Z790 Extreme. I already talked about that we don't have any updates that I can give regarding, still what we might be coming out with in terms of refresh for Z790 outside of the boards that we've already announced. But I did already confirm we have no plans to refresh the current, essentially, Extreme based motherboard. So if you didn't pick up either the Z690 Extreme, although I think there's still maybe a couple of e-tailers that might have new old stock of that board. I don't know. Same thing for the Z790 Extreme. It is now an EOL, so that means an end of life production. We're no longer actively producing it. We don't have a refresh that's planned. So my recommendation is if you're looking for a high-end ASUS ROG based board, take a look at the Maximus Dark Hero, or like I said, make sure and just watch upcoming content from us in the not too distant future. We've got some other stuff maybe coming out. So keep tuned for that, but no plans for a refresh in terms of the Extreme. Okay. All right. So that gets us covered on that side. All right, guys, let's go ahead and maybe do some giveaways. What do you think? Yeah, let's jump into some giveaways. All right. Let me go ahead and bring up page here. So I think the first one that we've got is going to be our Find Your Zen giveaway. So let me go ahead and share this page with you guys. I will drop the link in the chat for you guys as well. So if you guys are interested, you guys can check it out. All right, so you guys can see right here is Find Your Zen with ASUS. It's a monthly giveaway right here. You can see it's started yesterday, so 27th, and it will be running through the actual 13th of December. So we've actually got a little bit of time in terms of actually the giveaway for this giveaway, but some actually pretty cool stuff. You can actually see right here our recently launched ZenBeam L2 projector. This is a really nice 1080p based projector, portable projector, $699. Really nice option right here. We can also see we have one of our high quality Zen screens. This is actually one of our latest models with the integrated kickstand. It has connectivity on both sides, a really thin bezel design, really cool. And then you can see one here, one of our very high performing Zen Wi-Fi mesh networking based solutions. So you can see total price is up to $4,200, 74 days left right here. You can see right there that we're going to be doing 3 mesh systems of the XD5. We're going to be doing 3 monitors for the MB16QHG, and then we're also going to be 3 of the ZenBeam L2 smart portable projectors. So that's pretty sweet, guys. I would definitely recommend getting in on that. So you'll find out a little bit more information about these products if you are interested in terms of finding out about. These are all kind of recent additions that we've gone ahead and released to the market. So you can just go ahead and click on the join button, get in on it, and take advantage of it. So I think those are pretty sweet. It does actually look like this is a global based platform launch. So as always, double check in terms of the terms and conditions for your regions, but this does look like actually whether you're in the US or Canada, as always, though, make sure to double check on the terms and conditions. You should be able to go ahead and enter in. So pretty cool, pretty exciting. So I think 3 great prizes that will be running there in terms of different multiple sets all the way until December. So pretty cool opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and drop this one in the chat for you guys. All right. Give me 1 sec to go ahead and drop that in there. Let me quickly see right there. Michael notes is, I want a white extreme follow-up. Definitely there's no plans at all for any type of extreme board in white. You know, it's always a challenge. We've talked about this in the past in terms of the number of products that we can release in white. Right now, you know, we have the most comprehensive white product portfolio in the industry. There's really not a manufacturer that's actually producing more in white, including actually, I think, both across our systems business group as well as our open platform business group, right? Where literally we've got, you know, we have Prime motherboards, right? We have ROGStrix motherboards. We have even Maximus series boards that we've introduced in white with like the prior generation formula. Like I said, we might have some stuff coming out. We're now doing white in terms of GPUs, where we've done now that for multiple generations, not only with the ROGStrix series, we have the dual series in white. We also now have some new models that we have in Tough Gaming, which are also in white. We have Tough Gaming white fans. We've got multiple chassis from the Helios to the GT502 to the GT501, right? To the Hyperion, all available in white. You know, all of our current generation coolers we offer in black, and we also offer them white. We have white, you know, monitors, right? We have white peripherals from keyboards to mice to gaming surfaces, even with the new ROG Hone and even the upcoming Moonstone as well. So many different products, right? And it's very much a challenge, even though we've continued to see, I think, strong feedback from the community in terms of wanting white options. It's just not realistic to be able to offer every permutation of every product within a dual color option, right? So it's always about trying to balance the feedback, and there's also the tricky thing of, you know, whether or not that segment will kind of want to go in that direction for that kind of series of products. So it takes kind of time and feedback, but definitely, we always are monitoring that. So I would say not only to somebody like Michael, but anybody, if they're interested, always feel free, let us know. So whether it's in the PCDIY group, whether it's watching the stream, whether it's tagging us in social media, we always appreciate that feedback and saying, hey, we'd love to maybe see this product in there. Doesn't mean that we can guarantee producing in it. There's a lot of factors to go into kind of producing a product, especially when you talk about different colors, but it's definitely something that we're always interested in terms of getting feedback on. All right, let me go ahead and quickly see if there's one other question there before we get to our next giveaway. So Chris goes, I just purchased a Thor 2 PSU. Okay, so yeah, Chris, I think what you're asking about is essentially because in the Thor series, it doesn't come with the native 12-volt high power cable, right? The important thing to keep in mind is that the 600 watts is actually irrelevant. There's no GPU on the market that actually uses a default TGP, so power envelope of 600 watts. That's essentially the max of what can be provided. And keep in mind the prior PCI spec was actually somewhat conservative. It could actually go over what technically the rated value is. The vast majority of cards, even if you talk about on the high-end side, so even if you go something like a 4090, you're talking about generally a default TGP of 450 watts. ASUS is a little bit unique in that, of course, our highest performing cards, we even have a higher than default TGP, so 500 watts. But pretty much what that will come down to is that there will be an adapter cable. I thought I had one over here. Let me see. Yep, I got one. You will have one of these inside of the box for the graphics card, or you can get a direct cable if you want. The Thor will actually have a cable in the box. There's also a coupon code with Cable Mod if you want to get a more kind of like stylized kind of clean cable design or something like that. But pretty much you can see that the way that it'll break down is that you have that one 12-volt high power connector, and then you're going to have your 4 PCIe connectors, right? So depending on the graphics card that you're utilizing, the VBIOS and the TGP, you're probably at a minimum going to have to connect at least 3 of these, right, to be able to make sure that it's working correctly. But in some situations, you might actually want to head over and utilize all 4. You essentially want to just reference the documentation for your graphics card. It will tell you what that is. But the Thor, regardless of whether you're talking about like the Thor 2 850 watt, 1000 watt, 1200 watt, all of them will fully be able to support any of the current GPUs that are on the market without any issues. I've personally tested, like I said myself, the Thor 1000 watt, 1200 watt with 4080s and 4090s without any issues whatsoever. The actual peak power draw actually on the 40 series is better than even it is on the 30 series. So actually, oddly enough, the power draw technically on the power supply is lower on the newer cards, even though they're utilizing a higher spec connector in terms of that 600 watt 12 volt high power connector than they were for the 30 series. So either which way, you don't have to worry about it. Just go ahead and make your connections and you're good to go. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. All right. Michael notes, how about an ROG Red version? That's actually something that we have talked about. I mean, one of the cool things on ROG Red version, I would definitely say, was take a look at the ROGEVANGELION Wave 2 release, because that definitely has a really, really nice red in it. But that is something that I think we've kind of talked about internally about maybe having some additional, maybe limited edition kind of colorway options for certain products. The challenge is always is, what's the right quantity to produce them in, what's the right time to release it in, and, also what's the kind of relative demand. We ourselves really kind of push the industry at wanting to have a more neutral design within a lot of our product to be able to allow you as users the most flexibility to be able to build and define your system. So not having colors that were fixed onto the product, right? Going with more neutral color schemes, whether you were talking about grays, silvers, blacks, whites, all of these colors that generally were neutral, giving you flexibility to kind of use whatever accent you want, whether it's with RGB lighting or whether it's fixed color in other devices. So having a product that inherently has a fixed color actually is a little bit somewhat against the trend, right? But I think that definitely if done in the right way, and especially with the history that we have, especially on ROG where we've had red within so many of our products for so many years, I do think that there would be a pretty good interest. We just would want to do it about the right way. So it's not off the table, but nothing immediately that I'd say that we'd have planned as of right now, okay? We have a Facebook user that goes, my Tough Gaming PSU has a native 16-pin cable. It's great. Yes, actually, all of our other PSUs do feature ATX 3.0 compliance. So our ROG STRIX Aura Gold series, which just launched, I actually talked about this in last week's live stream because we had them actually all pretty much listed on our ASUS store. The Tough Gaming ATX Gold 3.0 series and the Loki is also. So all three of those models, they all come natively with the actual 12-volt high power connector ATX 3.0 spec. Hey Jeff, man, happy to have you. Thanks for joining us here on the stream. All right, so let's go into our second giveaway, guys, here. So our second giveaway is going to be in coordination with Soar. So if you guys do not know, of course, Soar is definitely very, very popular when you talk about Soar gaming. So we're doing a pretty cool thing to kind of kick off here, starting tomorrow, September 30th, going to October 1st, right? And it says, do you have what it takes to correctly pick the 2 teams that will qualify for the LAN finals? So you can see right there that there's going to be some awesome prizing that is going to be here for the people that essentially are going to be picking giveaways, right? Excuse me, well, picking the finalists, right? Or picking the teams. So you can see on the motherboard side, you've got everything from Maximus Z790 Hero, our latest generation flagship AIO with the Ryujin 3. Keep in mind, that's with the 8th gen Asetek pump. It's also got the largest screen on the market. It's got that updated 60 frames a second. It's got the daisy chain magnetic fans. It's got the thicker radiator. It's got the longer tubing. Really, really beautiful AIO cooler. You'll see it right there. A 13900K, our brand new XG259QN monitor. That's an ultra, not just a standard, but that's an ultra high refresh rate gaming monitor. I believe that one is 380 hertz. That's a 380 hertz 1080p based display. One of our flagship gaming products, our Tri-Band GT6. It's a really, really cool mesh networking product. Our latest generation ROG STRIX Scope 296. That's a really cool keyboard with our brand new ROG NX Snow switches. It's got tri-mode connectivity, sound dampening phone, improved stabilizers. Really, really awesome keyboard. And it's quite a bit more compact if you're somebody that really does like also having that 10 key, but almost like in TKL based form factor. Mouse pad, we've got the ROG Hone that we've got right there. Really, really nice. Crucial has thrown in a 2 terabyte PCIe NVMe Gen 5 M.2 SSD, a 2 terabyte one. Pretty sweet. The latest generation Crucial Pro DDR6000 memory. Ooh, nice. 48 gigabyte kit. That means you get 2 24 gigabyte DIMMs. Very nice. A Crucial X10 Pro 2 terabyte external portable SSD. And then we got some various ROG swag in a grab bag, man. I mean, that's some awesome pricing, man. So definitely, I'd say if you want to get in on it because it's only happening until October 1st. All right, guys. So I would recommend that you guys join in on that giveaway. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat for you guys. So give me 1 second here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and drop that one in there for you. Harid says, I'm wondering if ASUS is ever going to release those daisy chain fans. I've talked about that. No, we have no plans at all to release any standalone daisy chain fans. If you're talking about the ones that come included with our coolers, we do not have any plans at all to release those fans independently. They are matched specifically for our AI cooling solutions. They are not going to be sold independently. We have 2 great sets of fans that are right now available. We have our ROGxEVANGELION 120 fans, which is a great maglev high performing static pressure optimized just black fan, no RGB, really, really nice fan. And then we've got our Tough Gaming, the TF120 ARGB fans, which come in a single pack and also in a triple pack with a controller. They come in white and they come in black. Another great option. Those are not daisy chain, but they're also very, very reasonably priced and actually have a much better bearing than some fans that sometimes are even twice as expensive. Now, I have already communicated, we do also still have a roadmap for an independent ARGB fan under the ROG lineup, but we have no plans as far as giving you the information on terms of what that fan is going to look like, when it's going to be coming out. Probably I would say at earliest, maybe there might be information coming around the CES timeframe, so maybe the beginning of 2024. So if you're going to be looking for something from ASUS and ROG as a standalone daisy chain based fan solution, you'll probably be looking in terms of 2024. Otherwise, my recommendation would be take a look at our TF120 fans, or take a look at any of the fans that are on the market, of course, that are compatible. I'm a big fan of fans that don't require any type of controllers, that they can natively just plug into the 3-pin interface on the motherboard and then allow for direct control right through AC, right? So I don't have to use another application and I don't have to use a controller. But at the end of the day, it's PCDIY, so you can pick whatever you think works best for you based on your build. Okay. All right. I'm not sure, Michael, what your issues are. My recommendation would be, if you have anything, feel free to go ahead and, post it in the Armor Crate forum if you got a specific issue. I mean, I've got this system right here, which I pretty much use on a daily basis. I've got 2 other testbed systems, and then I have my 3 other daily systems that I use, and none of them have any issues. And my beta control group that I have, along with the system integrator sync up, which is very valuable to us to get feedback on software, because one, they keep their operating systems pristine because they're only just doing full clean installation environments. There's no pending issues, right? So we don't see any problems or any kind of issues that are right now based on any current builds or releases. But of course, when you talk about debugging, there's so many permutations, so many variables that come into play that sometimes it could just be one specific thing. So my recommendation would be create a log file, right, from the application, post it, submit it to our team, and allow them to see if they can review that and see if they can help to resolve whatever your issue might be. But I can tell you on my side, for both Intel and AMD, I haven't seen any issues. Everything's been working really smoothly. Yeah. All right. Yeah, those daisy chain fans are really sweet. I really like them. I would agree. I think it's really nice in terms of that. So yeah, sad face on the not matching daisy chain fans. At least one that matches aesthetically would be good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've done plenty of builds where I feel like it can still look pretty cohesive. I don't think that you have to match every single fan. I do get it though. I can understand. I mean, from my perspective, generally, if you're kind of top mounting the fans right on your radiator, you're not really going to generally see them. So I think the fans that are on the periphery, and this all very much depends on your chassis, right? It really depends on whether the fans are visible or not visible, right? I think in that respect, it kind of matters more or that matters less, right? And so in that regard, I think, like I said, the fans probably that you can't view them as much, especially if they're top mounted as opposed to being like side or front mounted. It's somewhat irrelevant. So I think it's more the periphery fans, your chassis fans. It becomes more of a kind of a factor on whether or not you want to try to match those. And then you could also get into the argument that even talking about for matching, some users don't account for the fact that their fans, especially if you're putting them in certain locations, they're not actually a reverse flow airflow fan. So technically they wouldn't match if you flipped it and you put it in the correct orientation for airflow characteristics, right? Unless you're getting like a reverse flow design and then a standard flow based design, which very few manufacturers are producing that. Like Cooler Master with their Circle Flow is one of the only companies, say for instance, that has like a reverse and then also has a standard base fan. So it gets into a lot of variability on supposedly really what's the right aesthetic pairing configuration to match and kind of make it all work well. But definitely, I mean, ASUS is all about aesthetics, especially within ROG. We can appreciate that. So it is something that we're aware of, that we know people want to see kind of that continuity and consistency of being able to pick, those fans and kind of pair them all together. But like I said, right now we have no plans to offer it as a standalone base option. Okay. Yeah. Chris notes, my AC is working fine. So thanks for that feedback, man. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. All right. But yeah, Michael, feel free. If you've got any things, like I said, I would recommend just, I think I've probably shared the link with you in the past, or you can check it in the PCDIY group. We don't allow posts there for that, but like I said, you can go ahead and post in the AC forum. Just like I said, I would recommend following the debug format and include the actual log file. That's critical. Go through the standard stuff. You can do an uninstall and reinstall. Take a look at recent updates that you might have. Do you have secondary applications that could be causing you an issue or things along those lines? Because like I said, right now, everything's running smoothly on my side. I haven't had any issues, and like I said, I'm running on a laptop that also has it, right? And, like I said, no variable problems in that regard. All right, so let's go into the next block here, guys. So I think that covers our 2 giveaways. We got no partner updates, so we're pretty much just going to jump into some new products, all right? As always, if anybody has any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them as we get them. So first one right here is going to be for the ROG STRIX Scope RX EVA. This is going to be for the O2 edition right here. So most of you guys are pretty much already aware that we've been doing, of course, even an Evangelion-based product release. So this is, of course, the full product assortment. Well, not the full, because there's actually some items that are not covered on right here. But if you're not aware, or you've been living on a rock somewhere, right, one of the things that ASUS has now been doing over the last couple of years is these IP collaborations. These are limited edition IP collaborations where we essentially take a certain amount of our product portfolio, we work with an amazing partner to be able to leverage their IP, and we integrate them onto our hardware. So we've done everything from Call of Duty, to we've done to Gundam, to we've done Demon Slayer, to our ROG Evangelion Wave 1, and now ROGxEVANGELION Wave 2, right? And so Wave 2 just started pushing out. We had our first initial release of a large amount of the hardware, then the second wave release, which included a number of the peripherals, and now this last one is just pretty much a follow-up specific to just the RX-based keyboard. So that is this keyboard right here. I'm not going to go spend too much time on it, but I do want to touch for maybe some of you that are not aware on some of the cool kind of features and functions that we have specifically on our keyboards. There's some pretty cool stuff, so I'm going to quickly just touch on this a little bit, but you can see the price point there, $149. So essentially $150. It will be offered in both blue switches, and it will all be also offered in red switches. So the RX keyboard is actually one of my favorite keyboards. The RX switches are in-house based optical switches. They use actually an X stabilizer based design, which allows them to be really, really stable, have very, very little keycap wobble compared to traditional MX based centered stem design. This is actually also a fully IP certified keyboard. So literally, you know, if you kind of spill anything on it, you're fine. You could actually dunk it in water, it'd be okay. It's very, very highly impervious to dust, debris, and dander buildup. So really, really nice and reliable. Nice, thick, smooth cord that's also on this. And it also has USB pass-through, which is nice if you want to be able to attach like a wireless adapter for maybe like a headset or for like a keyboard, excuse me, for a mouse or maybe another type of device. Okay. So if we take a look right here, you can see that it's got a heavy level of customization across the entirety, not only the color of the base body itself, but of course all the corresponding keycaps as well, right? With some cool little actually translucent elements on the escape, right? As well as on the F12 key, right? So really, really cool overall design that we have. We also do have keycaps for those of you that have an RX based keyboard. So if you have like the Claymore 2, you have the RG STRIX Scope RX TKO wireless, or some of the other boards that we have that have RX based switches, but you don't want to buy a whole new keyboard, but maybe you just want the keycaps. We do also have the keycaps for Evangelion independent just for this, but this is of course the whole Evangelion based keyboard. Now the big thing you'll see right here is that compared to a traditional switch, a traditional switch will generally have either what's called a north or south face based LED design. So it's kind of either here at the top or it's either here at the bottom. We have a centrally mounted LED design, which allows for a really nice balance in terms of the RGB lighting around the entirety of the frame. And then this whole housing is clear. It's also quite rigid and quite smooth. There's also some really cool design elements in terms of actually what's called the X stabilizer. So if we actually head over right here and we take a look, let's see here at this red switch, you can actually see one of the really cool things that we have here about this switch design, which will be the actual internal X stabilizer. So the X stabilizer allows it to be really, really consistent in terms of its overall actuation experience. And again, the keycap stability for me is probably the biggest thing that I love here, is that it doesn't matter whether you're touching kind of the center or the corners, it feels really smooth and consistent. Normally you'd have to get a really nice kind of box switch independently to be able to have that. Here you can see compared to a traditional design, right, it's actually quite a bit different, because if we go like right here, you would normally just have this spring, right? But you see this entire X stabilizer is really what allows the actual actuation to really be smooth and very consistent and feel quite nice. It also has a little bit of dampening to it. I'd also say quieter than a standard switch. Definitely not the quietest switch, but it's nicer if you're somebody that appreciates a little bit of a quieter switch. Me, I'm not a thocky person. I don't like thock. I don't like loud switches. I like my switches to be pretty much moderate or quiet. I like smooth actuation, so from that sound I appreciate nice audio from a switch, but I don't want an overtly loud switch. But if you guys like clicky, of course we do have the blue based variant, okay? And you can definitely see that nice bright, vibrant, dynamic lighting from that centrally mounted LED, which of course gets diffused around there. So really, really cool design that we have there for the actual ROG RX base switches, again in a linear and in a clicky option. Really overall nice keyboard. It also has integrated memory, so you can store multiple profiles on there if you want. So you've got flexibility. You can go ahead and have like a desktop kind of profile. You could have a gaming profile, and you can easily kind of swap between the two. And even if you don't want to use any software, we do have hardware level lighting control that's built into the keyboard. So if you utilize the function key and the arrow keys, you can actually adjust the lighting presets directly hardware level on the keyboard. So overall, a very, very cool keyboard with a lot of functionality, a lot of feature set. This is going to be the RX-based switch, which is exclusive to just this keyboard. You won't see it anywhere else. And that's the big reason why you have that really, really nice, consistent actuation experience, is that 4-point stem design, right? Where on a traditional keyboard, try it right now. If you have a keyboard, take your finger and start to kind of do a little bit of this. So if I pull this back right here, this one actually is an RX switch, so it's going to feel quite stable. But if you kind of just put your finger here and you start to kind of just see how much you can wiggle it, you'll probably see if you have what's called a center weighted stem, you're going to feel that stem just kind of bounce around a lot. Now, a lot of people get used to it and they just don't realize until they try something that's so much smoother, but it's really a much nicer experience. And once you kind of actually experience it, it's almost hard to kind of go back. It's one of the reasons also why I like our new ROGxEVANGELION Snow switches, which are actually a box type switch, but they do carry the benefit compared to the RX switch that they allow you to utilize standard keycaps. So if you do want to swap your keycaps, you can go with different keycaps. With the RX based switch, because we have that 4-point stem design, which gives us really great stability and very minimal force deviation, you do have to utilize our specific keycaps because they're specifically designed for that switch. All right, so that is going to be the ROG STRIX Scope RX EVA 02 edition. This is, again, the standard model. If you like that, and like I said, you don't want the EVA edition, and you just want a black version, hey, we got you covered right there. And we do also have like wireless versions of this type of keyboard. So if you like everything there, but you want something wireless, trust me, we've got you covered. Just check out our keyboards that we have. So maybe something like the ROG STRIX Scope 296 or the ROG STRIX Scope RX TKL Wireless Deluxe. Those would be other good options for you there. So pretty cool. That's going to cover us there. Let me go ahead and quickly see if we got any fixtures that. Michael goes, I like smooth. Nice that the RX is putting that. I'm putting that on my list. Yeah, I'm a big fan of smooth. I really love that. It's just it's a really just nice, smooth and consistent. This is actually the RX Reds right here. This is from the Claymore. So this is not the Scope RX, but it's the same exact type of switch. So just right here, if you just listen to it, it's got a really nice smooth. It's not overtly loud. Just nice, clean, consistent, just actuation. And because it's optical, so you don't have to worry about any type of that kind of lubing situation or anything like that. You just have just a nice, clean, reliable switch. So I'm definitely a fan of these guys. Like I said, if you want something with more even customization, more flexibility, then probably check out the ROGxEVANGELION Snow switches, which are a little bit different, but since they're a box switch, they still do offer a very nice level of actuation, smoothness, and keycap stability. Okay. All right. Yeah, so Michael goes, I would love a keyboard that has all the beautiful extras from all the versions put into one new big keyboard. That would pretty much already be, I would say, like our ROG ASUS, the Flare 2, Animate, or probably the ROG STRIX Scope 296. So the ROG STRIX Scope 296, if we show that one off, I could show you guys some images. That one pretty much already has like the latest of everything that we've done in terms of like our keyboards, but put it into one single model right here. So let me see, ROG STRIX Scope. Yeah, so we actually have this one. This is the ROG STRIX Scope RX that we'll have in one variant, and then we have it also in our Snow switches. So it just kind of comes down to whether or not you want customizable keycaps or if you don't, right? But here you get pretty much all of our things. You get like this new Speed Nova wireless chipset, which means you can have dual pairing with our mice. It has internal sound dampening foam, improved keycap stabilizers. You get the PBT double shot keycaps on there, right? You get all the kind of nice stuff that you would want in the keyboard. And this one is going to be with the RX based switches. Now, if you want one that doesn't have the RX based switches, and this one is also tri-mode, so you still have Bluetooth, you have low latency, 2.4 gigahertz, and you have USB-C. If you want to go the other route, then you can go with the non RX, and you can go with the Snow version. So the Snow version, which would be this one, it's going to look very similar, but technically the switches are the same. The switches are not the same, they're different. So you can actually see right here, this uses actually what's called a box kind of stem switch, right? So you can see this is reinforced, which helps to reduce that keycap wobble. Still is going to be a little bit different because it doesn't have that 4-pointed weighted stem. So I would say it's still a little bit less, but it's the best that kind of you can get within that type of scenario, right? And you still get all the other really cool elements of the keyboard, right? So that would be the ROG STRIX Scope 296. But the ASUS and the Flare 2 Animate, I think, are also really good options. I also still like a lot of the other RX switches, switch boards that we have too. So, you know, I think we probably got a model for you. It just depends on really kind of what you're looking for. Right. Somebody going, availability on the 32-inch OLED monitor. We already talked about that in our OLED live stream when we talked about those monitors. I'd go back and check that out, but no new updates. Our monitor is still a bit off. You're probably not going to see anything until probably the beginning of next year, right? Most immediate monitors that we have kind of coming out in the immediate kind of future is probably the upcoming ROGzEVangelion 540 hertz based monitor, and then probably the new OLED that we recently announced, the 49-inch ultra wide. So those are probably the two most immediate new kind of high-end ROG based monitors. Although we recently did update quite a number of monitors, like we had the ROGxG25 259QN that we just launched. We had the PG27UQR that just launched. We also had a mini LED update, right? So quite a number of other monitors, but that specific monitor, not for the foreseeable future. So I wouldn't worry about that. Again, when we're getting ready to launch about it, you'll see it noted specifically in the products that we'll be talking about for that week's stream. Okay. Sorry, I missed the part about the EVA keyboard release. Yeah, so you should see it within pretty much about the next week. So I would assume that it'll pretty much show up next week on our ASUS eStore. Should also show up on Amazon, and Micro Center should also have an assortment on that as well. So yeah, just watch out. Probably within the next 7 to 10 days, you'll be seeing that keyboard pop up. Okay. Tech Note says, I love my ROG STRIX Scope RX, man. Thanks for being Team ROG, man. Jason Porter goes, gosh, I wish I could afford any keyboard, man. Mine is so out of date. Yeah, man, you know, make sure to just keep it tuned to our PCDIY group. We're going to be having even more giveaways. We're doing all kinds of giveaways. I mean, we just announced 2 of them right there. So I think there's always hopefully an opportunity maybe to be able to pick something up from us on a giveaway side. But we do actually do a lot of promotions, especially on the peripheral side. And that ROG STRIX Scope keyboard is really not that expensive. So you know, even if you can just save a little bit each month, in a few months you can be able to pick it up. You know, the ROG STRIX Scope RX, that one, the Evangelion edition is a little bit more expensive because, of course, it's the limited edition IP version, right? But the standard ROG RX STRIX Scope model, that one we've actually sold for under $100, right? I've seen it on promo for like up like $80. You know, and routinely it's usually somewhere between about like that $90 to about like $115, $120 price point. So it's not too expensive, especially for the caliber of keyboard that it offers. So I think it's quite reasonable. It's not super expensive, you know, definitely like some of our more premium keyboards like the ROG STRIX Scope 292 and 96, or the Flare Animator like the Azoth, right, which, you know, you can be breaking $200+, right? But man, definitely, hopefully you'll be able to pick up a new keyboard, man, and hopefully you'll be able to keep us in mind when you do that, man. So best of luck to you, Jason. All right. That covers our update there on the keyboard side. Let's go in for a quick update on GPU. We're not going to definitely spend too much time on this because we've talked actually about these GPUs already, but it's just pretty much a soft reinforcement in terms of an update to the product line that we have for the dual series. So this is going to be the dual GeForce RTX 4060 Ti. So we already actually have this exact model already available. Just the one that has been more readily available has been the OC based variant. It's a small cost increase, the OC based variant. The OC variant is exactly the same exact model. There's no difference. So the cooler, the GPU, the memory, everything is exactly the same. The difference is that the GPU is verified, right, in terms of the overclocked frequency during production, right? So that slight increase in frequency that's on there is essentially pre-programmed to the card, so it's a factory overclocked version. So it performs a little bit faster in terms of a few frames in terms of performance increase. You can generally overclock the standard version to that frequency. So in that respect, you can, if you want to save, you know, whatever the $10 is between like the OC and the standard, then you can go with the standard version. Keep in mind that though, that there is a reason why we factory verify the OC, because not every single card, or quote unquote every single GPU, can actually hit that overclock. Some people kind of give it as a guarantee, and that's not the reality. Definitely, if you check like 50 GPUs, you will find that there are some GPUs that just won't be able to operate stably at that frequency. That being noted, it's a great card. We offer it in white and we offer it in black. It's got a really nice, clean, stylized ID. It's actually, I have the black version installed right here. Looks really nice. There's no RGB lighting on it. It's nice and compact, which also is great if you've got something that's going to be a little bit more compact, like maybe a mini ITX or a micro ATX based build. The small profile design works really well at fitting a large number of GPUs. This does utilize our new axial take based fans. So those axial take based fans have a ring barrier, which are static pressure optimized for improved airflow that focuses into the actual heatsink assembly. Overall, like I said, nice, cool, compact card. Some people ask what the 0 dB mode means. It's actually something that ASUS pioneered. You might not realize that, but we were actually the first manufacturer to implement 0 dB on graphics cards, and we've seen it actually mirrored or copied across pretty much the industry, including now even reference designs, right, from both NVIDIA and AMD include 0 dB operating functionality. But ASUS actually was the first to design and develop this feature on graphics cards. But it's pretty straightforward. If your graphics card is essentially operating underneath a certain thermal target, so that's generally going to be 55 degrees, I believe approximately, yeah, or a certain wattage. It's not just the temperature, it also accounts for wattage, so it has to be a certain wattage target, and the temperature, the fan won't spin. So that's really nice, because if you're just, you know, watching a stream, watching some video, looking at photos, taking a look at the internet, maybe doing some email, maybe looking at social feeds, you're not using a lot of the GPU. You might actually be only utilizing the GPU generally from like a 2D mode and not even in a 3D mode. So in that regard, you get the quietest experience, you get reduced wear and tear in terms of the fans and the bearing, and overall it's just a nice quiet experience. And then of course the moment your card gets to that certain threshold, then the fans spin up. Now you can customize that all you want. If you want to go into the GPU tweak software, you can go ahead and customize the fan curve, and you can disable a 0 dB mode. So if you don't want it, you can go ahead and disable it, and the fan will always spin, and it'll even spin at a very low speed even when the card is not doing anything. That's entirely your choice. And another cool thing that you may not be aware of is that we do, like all of our graphics cards, they get produced using the ASUS Auto Extreme Productive process. So that is an advanced, what's called SMT, or surface mount technology process. We were the first manufacturer in the industry to unilaterally apply this to all our graphics cards. So literally everything from our $100 graphics card to a $2,000+ graphics card are all produced using the same advanced SMT production process. We are the first company to unilaterally do that across the board, from our entry to our mid-range to our highest end models. So it's something that's pretty cool in terms of offering you a consistent caliber of high quality production, like I said, across any GPUs that you pick. So even if you pick one of our other GPUs, maybe you pick up something like an RX 7600, or maybe you pick up like a 3050, or you pick up a 4080. The cool thing is they'll all be produced utilizing that same production process. So that is going to be the dual 4060 Ti. Let me go ahead and show you quickly just some side profile images here so you can get a little bit picture of the card. Let me go ahead and bring that up really quick. Yeah, I'll show this to you really quick here. And you can kind of see right there a little bit of the card ID design. This is kind of like a little bit of a somewhat kind of opaque, but it has a little bit of subtle transparency to it. A nice HDMI output. Also, nice little premium thing you might not realize. We're the only manufacturer that uses a stainless steel I/O bracket. You get a nice little backplate in there. This card looks great in a side horizontal kind of profile design with just that nice little transparency and the white accents right there. And again, we do have it in white, and we also have it in black. So pick the card that you want. Price delta between the two also is also, I don't actually think there's a price delta between the black and the white model. They're both essentially the same price. All right, that takes care of that there. Let me quickly just see if there's any quick questions right there. Quick question, if a monitor firmware update provides a negative result, is it easy to return a firmware? That would be pretty rare. I don't know that I've ever seen a situation where I've had an experience where the firmware has actually been negative for a monitor. Also, monitors tend to very rarely get a firmware update. It usually only tends to be on very specific kind of maybe higher monitors like mini LED, sometimes an OLED-based monitor, something along those lines, because most of the time we extensively vet the firmware before we release the monitor, right? So usually only occasionally have that. If you have an issue, though, my recommendation would be reach out to the service support team with a clear, demonstrable guidance process to be able to duplicate whatever your supposed issue is that you're experiencing, right? That's very important, because sometimes people will just articulate an issue, but they won't provide any semblance of actually how they got to that issue, how they're experiencing that issue, how they're comparing, contrasting that. And that's really important if you want us to really be able to generally try to attempt to debug and evaluate your situation. So if it's ours, yes, I would recommend that. Can you be able to kind of toggle back and forth the firmwares? Technically, yes, it should be possible, but you would also have to have the prior firmware to be able to go ahead and flash to that, and it would also have to pass the checksum compliance for that firmware. Okay. All right. Hopefully that answers that question. Just see right there. Introvert alert is JJ. I remember you talking about it in a previous podcast about the ROG EVA 2 monitor not being available in North America, but being available globally. I'm in Australia. Any information on this monitor? Yeah, I can't confirm for you in AU. So ASUS AU, you would have to kind of confirm through ASUS AU channel. So I would recommend maybe pinging them through their social media channel. So their X, their Facebook, their Twitter, or you can generally go to the ASUS website in your corresponding region, and there should be a contact us portion. So I can actually show you here what that will look like. Let me go ahead and bring up the ASUS website in my region, and you can confirm on availability. So yes, assuming that Australia is actually carrying the product assortment in your region, then I would assume they might have the monitor available. But in North America, so for Canada and for the United States, yes, we are not carrying that the Evangelion Wave 2 based monitor. But where you can go outside of kind of directly going in like direct messaging on a social platform, you should be able to generally go over to this section over here somewhere, and there should usually be like a Contact Us tab. In the Contact Us tab, there might kind of be some different drop-down filters. Sometimes they might have like asking the department, and so if there's like a department that says like marketing, generally that could be a good option, so you could click that. Or there might be sometimes like a curated filter like this. So either one of those would be my recommendation on how you could try to confirm with the team on the product availability for your region, because again, every region generally has a different product matrix or assortment that they have carried. A lot of the broader bigger regions will usually have pretty similar kind of product matrices. So like Germany or like the UK would probably be pretty similar to the US, but I can tell you from my own experience after being with ASUS for 15 years, even amongst broad markets, there are differences where sometimes one region will not even carry that product, and we will carry that product. So it's definitely something you want to attempt to confirm specific to ASUS in your region. So Kindachi, I believe that, hopefully I'm saying your username right. You're asking essentially about trying to figure out like how to best be able to kind of get into some of our limited product assortments, right? So one example, I think what you're specifically asking there about is kind of the matrix availability. So that's something that we attempt to try to kind of provide visibility to. So that was kind of actually one of the goals within our PCDIY group. We've recently kind of gone through a little bit of transition. So I've actually talked with our community manager about this. So hopefully we'll make improvements in terms of trying to provide visibility there. It's a little bit tricky though in terms of providing like an exact guidance, because there's always going to be differences to different people's kind of connections to servers, how certain things get refreshed, latency, and kind of ping and other things that kind of factor into that. We are also evaluating kind of other pathways too over time as we develop our backend platform. So some options could be like our RG Elite Rewards program. We may look to say, hey, if you get into Elite or Super Elite, you may actually have like a first opportunity. So maybe we'll have like an allocation of a limited product. So in a limited product could be something like an Apex motherboard, or it could be like a Matrix. And if you're Elite or a Super Elite user, we'll say, hey, do you want to be able to actually have opportunity to purchase this, right? And then from there, we would actually have an allocated stock. The other option that we're also evaluating, of course, is going to be some form of like a queue type system. That is quite a bit more complicated though. It requires an entire kind of backend and framework, and there is also a cost to that association in terms of development and implementation, but it is something our web team is looking at. So definitely we're mindful that we want to try to be able to make the process as good as possible, and we have actually even implemented things like we have like bot mitigation features, which actually restrict actually how frequency certain IPs can actually like hit like the back end of the site, and if we notice that actually they're too frequent, we can actually automatically block them, therefore increasing the probability of like a more normal type of consumer experience. But there's a lot of factors that, regardless of whatever it might be, my recommendation is that if you have feedback for us on that, feel free to go ahead and send that to us. You can actually go to the ASUS store and go to again to the Contact Us option and give them guidance on maybe certain types of options or things that you would like to try to see us implement. But it is something that we are actively looking at, and hopefully you'll continue to see improvements from us in that respect over the coming months and over the coming year. Okay. All right. This is an interesting one. Can we get a Linux version of Armory Crate? We have no plans to develop a Linux version of Armory Crate. And to that extent, though, we do like I said, for certain products, we have like integrated microcontrollers that allow for lighting level control. So like take, for instance, like keyboards, even if you can install Armoury Crate, you can still actually have access to the profile support. You can actually have control to the hardware level lighting through the function key and the arrow key. Now for some other product, it gets more complicated, right? Because like if you got one of our coolers, it's going to have the default animation, but you can't customize it, right? Or it could be something like maybe motherboard lighting, right? We are looking at options to potentially sometimes maybe be able to enable something within the firmware similar to fan controls, but the reality is that the amount of coding space and the complexity of having like RGB lighting management within a firmware environment is significantly more complex than doing it through software, especially if you're looking to actively maintain development for it. It becomes considerably more challenging. There's also space allocation that we have to consider for things like future CPU support, where we have sometimes what's called no touch space in that ROM, where we know that there's future CPUs that we're going to have to be able to bake in, and we can't use that space even if we want to introduce a function or feature into the firmware environment. So there are kind of different scenarios. We are also actually looking at, and you'll maybe see it, I don't know if you'll see it this year for the release, but peripherals, we are looking to release a new kind of light application, and there may even be like a web-based application. This gets kind of complicated depending on how you can implement what's called the microcontroller and working from like a web framework. But one option might be that kind of like similar to our routers, where you can actually enter like a web address and you can access like an integrated UI for the router, right? A UI. You might be able to actually go to like the web interface and then maybe be able to have certain levels of control functionality that might be more limited than the more advanced software suite, but accessible directly from a web-based interface. So we're definitely looking at multiple things in terms of kind of what could be developed. And we also offer an open SDK for the Aura utility. So at least for RGB level lighting, the community has been given access to trying to integrate this. And we have seen that with, third-party utilities to varying degrees as far as how good they've implemented it. But there are ones that have attempted to kind of leverage that information, whether it's, applications like OpenRGB or Signal RGB or whatnot, right? But generally, they're not going to offer as comprehensive feature set and functionality as what we're going to offer in our utility, right? Especially for specialized functions like Armoury Crate or fan controls or things like that. It's really only good for kind of basic lighting synchronization control and support. All right. Michael goes, is there any plans to make an app? It has been something that we've discussed, but right now, nothing planned in the future, right? We just think that from a kind of a management standpoint, we find that most users prefer kind of the responsiveness and the resource flexibility and just kind of also the reduced latency, because if you do it through an app, you have to realize that even for like things that you're managing through an app, whether if it's like Bluetooth or stuff like that, you add in latency. And what we find is that the level of complexity and the amount of kind of changes that people do, it's best realized right now through some form of a local application. So right now, I'm not saying that we wouldn't potentially have an app, but right now we have no plans to kind of push on that. Our real goal is to continue to improve the feature set and the functionality and the experience of the software that we offer, because AC is now used across, I think right now we're close to 35 million active users. That's across, of course, components and laptops and all the devices that we have in the ASUS ecosystem. So that's a lot of users, and that's where our focus and priority is at. The second thing is, like I said, evolving, I think, like a light version of the application, which is more focused, I think, for specific users, especially on the peripheral sides, where they might want just kind of peripheral management, but they might not want anything else within the utility. So that's also something that we're kind of looking at. Okay. All right. Anyway, Trace, we got a little bit on a sidebar there, but no worries. You see right there, did the last wave? Yes. So technically, we're pretty much at that last wave in terms of the Evangelion release. So all of the product assortment has pretty much pushed out. I think the only item that I have not seen, and I'll double check that, is I think the scabbard. I think the scabbard is the only item now within the Evangelion lineup that we have not actually pushed out in terms of channel availability. So yes, everything else has been pushed out. So either we've pushed it out and it's sold out and it's waiting on a restock, or it just got recently pushed out, like the RX-based keyboard, which just got pushed out, so it hasn't gotten yet listed, right? And you can go ahead and check that right now. So right now, probably the most frequent refreshing that's happening for product assortment is on the ASUS website. I'd say then kind of the slowest right now, but it is a channel partner for us that is also listing, would be Amazon. And then you also have partners like on the physical side, which would be like Micro Center. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. let's go ahead and go into our next item. So that is, sorry, we did the RX-based keyboard. We did the dual 4060 Ti. So let's go ahead and now go into our next item right here. And let's do, that's a routing product, and it's going to be the ExpertWiFi, the EBM68. Okay, so most of the time, usually when I'm talking about networking, we're usually covering our networking product in the kind of more, let's say, gaming or kind of like traditional product space. This is actually more in our prosumer and professional series of product, which is a new product series from us in terms of ExpertWiFi. I'm still going to go ahead and touch on it though. The main kind of focus with ExpertWiFi, it probably breaks down to a few areas. One is going to be that it has more advanced support for things like what are called VLAN or SDNs, so self-defined networks. So self-defined network could be important if you can imagine, like, let's say if you have a small business, a small office environment, and you want to be able to have like a specific environment for just customers being able to sign in that is entirely independent of your network, right? And it might have also specific sign-in criteria. It might have specific password configurations. It might have, you know, maybe even connection to something like a VPN, right? That is all possible. And so we actually allow for up to 5 essentially kind of guest networks under that SDN based configuration. There's advanced VPN support. There's also going to be a difference in terms of what's called the maximum mesh node expansion. So with traditional AI mesh, generally most users are probably going to be somewhere between 2 to probably about 5. I think technically we've done validation with 5+ configuration, but that's generally where we have a technical, like our recommended limit for traditional ASUS AI mesh. That would be very, very big though. But with our ExpertWiFi line, actually our validation goes up to 12 nodes. So there's quite a bit more expansion where you could keep adding on kind of APs and other units. We also are fleshing out a kind of quite a bit of a different ecosystem in terms of these products. So we actually have dedicated not only units, but we have also APs as well. So separately, if you're just deploying just the APs. So there's a bit kind of a different configuration focus that we have available here for these models. Some of the things that are kind of unique to this, like I said, we do have noted here on the page, and you can actually find out about them, such as like what I noted for the VLAN, dual backup and WAN, although technically actually all ASUS routers right now have dual backup and WAN support. So that means you can set a separate port as another WAN port. We also, with the new ASUS WRT firmware 4 feature, it's pretty cool, where if you have an Android phone or if you have an iPhone, you can just connect literally the cable, the USB cable from your phone to the port on the actual router, and you can use that cellular connection as a backup connection. If your primary, let's say, ISP service like DSL or your fiber or your cable goes down, you can actually just default and utilize your cellular connection. And that's a new feature that we introduced, and that's right now available, I think, on over 30 ASUS routers. So normally something that's kind of more in that prosumer professional phase, we've already rolled out to actually our general routing product, but it is definitely available in our, let's say here, our more kind of expert focused, right, or prosumer professional based networking product, right? You still maintain a full comprehensive advanced feature set available within the ASUS app that's available to you. There's also something that is called a captive portal system. The captive portal system is pretty cool because if you, again, you have an environment where you would want to be able to create like a specific page that maybe has like a logo, a little bit of information, certain criteria for people to be able to have access to. Normally that actually is quite a bit, it's actually quite complicated to kind of set up, but we have predefined templates that are built in, allowing for the users to be able to do that. So they could go in and just put their specific name, their kind of logo information, maybe terms and conditions, and it'll automatically generate it for you. So really, really nice and easy. You'll also see that there's actually some specific attention to detail that we've done in terms of mounting flexibility. So things like integrated wall mounting, accessed mouse mounting, the cooling design for long-term reliability, because of course you might deploy this and it might be up on a wall or something and it could be left there for 5 years, right? It's never going to move, right? And it needs to be able to perform reliably. These new units also do have faster than WAN based connections. It depends on the model. We have some models that might just be gigabit based WAN, but this model specifically has a 2.5 gigabit WAN, so it's kind of built for that next generation of ISP service that is starting to come to market, right? So this model, along with other ExpertWiFi models, have started now getting ready to deploy out in terms of the ecosystem. If you're interested in more, feel free to go ahead and check out the corresponding website. This model will be coming in at $599, which definitely comparatively, you take a look at it in the EcoPlay system, especially if you talk about kind of features for like our integrated security, our VPN fusion, advanced controls. There's no subscription costs like some other companies are going to charge you like a yearly subscription cost for certain functions or features. We don't have any of those associated costs. Okay, so that is going to be the ExpertWiFi EBM68. All right, so that's going to take care of us there. So the last item that I'm going to touch on here is going to be a portable display. So it's going to be under monitors. So some of you might have seen in the past, let me go ahead and bring this up, that we've had some other kind of portable displays that we've touched on specifically under the ProArt lineup. This was one of the first ones that we did, which was the PA14, 14.8 CTV. So this was a 14-inch 1080p 100% sRGB coverage, outstanding color accuracy, 10-point touch, had USB-C and HDMI and an ASUS dial and integrated kickstand. Really flexible unit. The really cool stuff here with the control center technology means that you had also integrated kind of panels for different applications. So we have this for like Lightroom, for like Photoshop, for like Premiere, and you could actually have full kind of dedicated controls for those applications on the monitor. Even though it's a monitor, you could be using this like a touch control based interface. So that was pretty cool. But we had some people that were even looking for actually a larger display and even a higher resolution. So the next model actually didn't meet that target. It made a little bit more of a varied target, which is here with the, it's going to be the PA14 7CDV. So this was a non-traditional aspect ratio, 14-inch, but a 32:9, and very similar level of functionality, right? 10-point touch, you had robust connectivity, you could go vertical or you could go horizontal. It had the integrated dial as well. You had the integrated touch support for other applications. This one was really slick and cool too. Also had that pen input touch. And you could also go ahead and go vertical or horizontal depending on the orientation. So you didn't have to use it in one singular orientation. So you had a lot of flexibility. But now the latest model that I want to go ahead and touch on is actually going to be this one. This is going to be the PA169CDV. So this is going to be our newest update. I don't have pricing for you yet, but this one will be probably coming out in the not too distant future, probably next month. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but pretty much it's like the 14-inch version, just a larger version and even higher resolution. But it does included, critically, it comes actually included with Wacom EMR stylus. So 15.6 inches, IPS, 4K with the Wacom EMR. Again, 100% sRGB coverage, outstanding color accuracy out of the box, 10-point touch, USB-C that also supports DP. So again, if you have a tablet or if you have a phone that supports display output, you're good to go. But it also has HDMI. With HDMI means any HDMI enabled output device can of course work with this. It also has the ASUS dial and control pad support, and that is all integrated in there. Has a nice integrated, of course, kickstand in there for easy deployment and adjustment. So whether you want to use it more kind of in a writing fashion or you want to use it as a secondary display, it is going to be good to go. Now, keep in mind, ASUS right now probably has the biggest portable mic lineup in the industry. We're a true leader in this respect. So we have everything from truly portable based monitors that have an integrated battery. We have OLED solutions. We've got even bigger monitors that go to 17 inches, even our largest one, which is a 24-inch, which just launched, right? We've got tons of different options, but these are specifically our ProArt centered models, right? So these are the PA based designations. If you're looking at some of the other models, feel free to check out models that we have under our Zen Screen series lineup. So our MB series, which go down to 13 inches all the way up to generally 16 inches. We then have the gaming series, which is under ROGxEVANGELION. ROGxEVANGELION series are generally going to be 15 up to 17 inches. And then, like I said, we also have, like I said, other models which might have specific feature sets, like might be wireless, might have an integrated battery, have touch or don't have touch. But, you know, probably whatever you're looking for, we have a model that meets that criteria. So this one's actually, I'm really excited about. If you guys don't know, whenever I travel, actually, I always take a secondary monitor with me. It's just a huge convenience to be able to have a secondary display that I can literally pull out of my bag, put it right next to my laptop, be able to have my email or photos or watch secondary content, or even for me, my work laptop, they haven't upgraded me to a newer one. So the display isn't as high resolution as I'd like or other things. So even when I'm just watching kind of media content, I prefer to watch it on the nicer external display. Plus, I also really like touch because I like being able to go ahead and swipe through different things like that. So overall, it's nice to be able to have that flexibility. So that is going to be the PA169CDV. So pretty cool addition that we're going to have there in terms of our ProArt based displays. Okay. Visgo goes, I can't tell you anything about Europe. Is it possible to find an ASUS GPU? Yeah, I can't tell you anything in regards to your type of question. If you have something specific to your region, the best thing that would be relevant to find out about what you're trying to find out about is to ask ASUS in your specific region. Keep in mind, though, that products that are produced in terms of your region are specific in terms of the serial number of production to each country, right? So take, for instance, like when you have an ASUS-based graphics card for North America, we have a serial number of production that's batch specific to us. That can even influence generally production, although it depends. Some products generally might have only one production facility. Other products might have multiple production facilities. Ultimately, there shouldn't actually be any variability in terms of that because we are, from kind of our product management standpoint, we all define to hit a certain target in terms of the output quality, consistency, and validation. Again, like I noted something with like our ASUS Auto Extreme production process, it doesn't matter which GPU you're buying, whether it's AMD or NVIDIA, whether it's a 4060, a 4090, or 7700 XT, they're all being produced through that same process. There are, of course, differences in terms of the PCB and the core components, the thermal solution, or other elements, right? But they're all striving in terms of having that same kind of target implementation process, right? So whatever though your question ultimately is, because it's not very clear there, my recommendation is just reach out to the team in your specific region. If you don't know where to start, my recommendation is just reach out to our service and support team through email, and they can help to kind of get you hopefully to the right point of contact. Okay. All right. All right, so if you guys have other questions on that, feel free and let me know. I'm going to go ahead and drop those models, though, in the chat. So give me 1 second right here. I like that. JC is going STRIX scar. That's tough. I don't know if I would want a scar because, I mean, of course, for my work laptop, you know, like this one actually right here, I do have an RG STRIX scar, which I do my streaming on. But for like my work laptop, when I'm like actually like working and I have to travel, it's just like one of our basic, I think like it's like a Viva book from like, I don't know, it's like 8 years ago. It hasn't been swapped, but a lot of times I'm working on one of my other systems, so it's not too much of a thing. But, you know, I actually really like a lot of what we do on, I don't know, maybe, I mean, maybe a Zephyrus because I would want it to be light, you know. So I think I would actually probably go more with something on our, on maybe like our business books, so like our expert book, one of our new Vivo books, like Vivo Book Pros, or definitely one of our Zen books. You know, although I do maybe occasionally want to be able to have some gaming functionality, so having something that has also a discrete GPU, which can exist on like our Vivo Book Pro or like our Zen book, would be, I think, a good option. But, you know, G14 is pretty sweet because that's also a really, really nice option where, you know, it's thin, it's light, it's super performant, it's cool, it's got a great display, so it's great. But I really do like touch, and we don't have any touch on any of our ROG series laptops. That's pretty much always going to be on something like our Vivo book or like our Studio book models or Zen book line or something like that. But JC, man, thanks for showing me the love. I appreciate it. You know, but hopefully let's get that chair first, right? Let's get the chair first. All right. So with that, guys, that covers pretty much our new product there. So now I'm going to go ahead and get ready to jump in. I want to talk a little bit about Wi-Fi 6 and 2.5 gigabit networking. But before I do that, I do quickly want to go ahead and touch on something. So let me go ahead and bring this up. So I believe, you know, of course, I always know because my birthday is at the end of the month. It was recently, it was on the 28th, but knowing when we kind of get around that time frame, that usually means that we're going to have the first day of fall. So the one thing that I quickly want to touch on right here, guys, is letting you guys know that we actually have some pretty cool fall and winter ROG apparel. So if you guys don't know, starting a few years ago, we started actually really ramping up our what we call like our apparel and kind of like fashion oriented based products. So we have everything from kind of like t-shirts to sweatshirts to actually tons of stuff. We have everything from, you know, from backpacks to bags. We actually even have new luggage, which we just actually started launching. So some really cool, even additional accessories. There's even more stuff that's actually coming out. And I can tell you, I think compared to a lot of other companies, we do actually are really putting in a lot of effort into the quality of the textiles, the production, the material, and stuff like that. So if you happen to be an ROG fan and you're also maybe looking for something new, maybe feel free to check it out. I'm just going to show you a couple of the options that we have available here. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Hopefully also, maybe you'll see some cool giveaways that maybe we'll do in the community. Maybe I'll bug Jake about seeing if maybe he wants to do something like that in the community. I know that we have a pending Hyperion giveaway that we're going to do in the group. So if you guys want to make sure to actually get in on that, do that. We're going to do that next month, is the ROG Hyperion giveaway. So make sure to get in on that. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of these items right here. So first one is going to be here, the ROG Asymmetry Windbreaker. This is going to be quite a bit lighter, so not something like you have, of course, with like a full jacket, or maybe the little bit more heaviness that you might have in something like, let's say, a sweatshirt or like a hoodie. Just a nice secondary layer over, breaking a little bit of that wind, covering a little bit of kind of that sprinkle. Nice, I think, for the fall before you get into maybe the heavier kind of winter scenario. Of course, for our friends up north, maybe Canada or maybe on the East Coast, depending on the time of where you're at and how cold it gets, you're definitely going to be wanting to look at some of the heavier items. But this is a nice little kind of layer item that you can throw in. You can see we offer it in a range of items. Some of the cool little things right here is I think it's got a nice, clean, kind of pretty neutral based design, but it's got a little bit of flair to it. But also it's nice and compact right here. So it's 100% nylon, which also gives it some nice resistance against kind of puncturing or ripping. So that's also pretty cool. But it packs into its own thing. So also if you just kind of wanted to throw this and have it maybe in a backpack or a bag or your car or something like that, just so you have, hey, I've got that. That's actually kind of cool. I like that. So that is going to be the ROG Asymmetry Windbreaker. Okay. And I do also like that compared to, I think, a lot of other kind of traditional windbreakers, they don't necessarily always have actually pull tabs right here. So pull tabs for me is a nice kind of detail that our team did right here, which actually gives you a little bit more structure at actually compressing this in. So depending on the size of your head, you can actually pull that in so stuff doesn't necessarily get in, breaks away a little bit more wind, and gives it just a little bit more structure. Okay, so that is going to be the Asymmetry Windbreaker. Next one right here is going to be the Asymmetry jacket. So this is going to be actually quite a bit of a kind of higher end based jacket. It's really been designed for actually a very high level of breathability, as well as actually pretty much eliminating any type of water permeability. So this is really like, hey, you don't have to worry about if you have very heavy rain coming down, you have sleet kind of environment like that, it's not going to get through. So it'll keep you super dry in terms of on the inside, but it is challenging. Anytime you make anything that doesn't have actually any type of ability to have permeability, you don't also want to trap in moisture because you don't want it to be like a sauna and be sweating inside. So the actual team used actually a really cool layered process, and the layered process actually in the composition of those layers is selecting actually a textile that actually has vapor discharge. And so that allows actually a certain amount of the kind of the sweat or that buildup to be able to actually still come out through, which improves the breathability for the actual jacket, which is pretty cool. It's got some kind of cool little design details, a little bit of reflective accents right here. There's also some cool stuff as well as in terms of kind of the way the pocket design works. So this guy right here, this can actually kind of open up and you can immediately have access to things like your phone or maybe like a you know, maybe like a small notebook and your pen or kind of different items like that, maybe some like in-ear monitors. So you see right here, instead of having to kind of like go into a pocket or something like that, you could just kind of pull out to the side, open that up and have quick access to that, and you would be good to go. You can see the kind of the reflective design accents there for the nighttime as well. And again, right here, you also have a little bit of a compartment for storage. So pretty sweet. That one's pretty nice. Also, the breathability, the permeability is over 20K, which is on the very high end side. So even if you compare that to something like, you know, let's say the high end kind of more expedition rated items, when you break the 10K item, 10K permeability level, that's really where you're talking about a very, very high level of essentially water resistance or being kind of like waterproof, quote unquote, right? ROG Message sweatshirt. It's pretty sweet, just a nice clean sweatshirt. It's got a nice clean minimal design right here in terms of the ROG logo, and it's got some cool little patterning finishing on the back, and it's also in white or in black. So you can get it in white and you can get it in black. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Another one, this is the ROG Facial Reco sweatshirt, right? Some cool little designs. It's like this kind of, it's like a little bit weird. It's like it's kind of like dystopian. It's got a little bit of cyberpunk. It's got a little bit of kind of 80s kind of vibe to it, but also kind of modern. It's all a little bit kind of thrown together. ROG Cosmic Look hoodie. Actually, I have this one. I have this one. This is actually, I wear this one. I haven't worn it I haven't worn it recently because I'm in Northern California and it gets really hot. And even over the last couple of days, I've still been in the upper 80s or 90s. But It's nice, lightweight, has actually a nice kind of moisture breathability to it right here. Nice clean pocket, smooth actually weaving on it. Compared to some other actually sweatshirts as well, I like that actually it's a dual, what's called a dual panel design. Dual panel design means it's not contiguous in terms of the arm and the main body, and the advantage of that is actually gives you kind of more range of motion. So I'm a bigger person, and actually sometimes having a single panel, it actually creates more of like this draped look, which actually doesn't look as, I think, fitted or kind of clean. So actually I like that structure more. Again, you have some really nice actually pull ties in there. This is actually also glow in the dark, which is pretty cool. So it's subtle, but it's actually got a little bit of a glow in dark kind of color to it, which is pretty cool. All right, you can actually see, you can see that right there. So it's got a little bit of glow in the dark vibes. Nice little Tyvek table, which is pretty nice there too. Okay. And this, I believe this actually uses even Coolmax. Coolmax is a pretty cool actually fiber material, which actually has a pretty nice element in terms of actually not maintaining a high level of heat. And so one, you kind of stay warm, but it keeps a little bit of a cooler vibe than sometimes maybe a full kind of heavier cotton type of sweatshirt, where that also is not necessarily the friendliest for the buildup of heat. Because like if you start to sweat and it holds on to wetness, you get like this really kind of damp, kind of heavy feeling, where you can actually even inversely feel actually cool because you actually have the sweat, you have the water that builds up internally in there, as opposed to having something that has a little bit more breathability to it. So actually I'm a really big fan of this one, the Cosmic Liquidity. We have the Cosmic Bomber Jacket. I'd like to get one of these. These are actually pretty nice. Okay. And right here, and then one last one, the ROG Space Windbreaker. Okay, so a little bit of an upgrade compared to that asymmetry base windbreaker. All right, so that's some just cool updates there on the ROG fall apparel. And even if you guys don't pick up anything right now, make sure and just check out frequently like the pages. Like over the coming weeks, I wouldn't be surprised sometimes we win promos. I know the last season, I don't know if Kevin's still here in the chat, but I know he picked up a couple of things when we had on. Like we've had sometimes promos on some of the apparel, just like you see in any apparel line, right? Sometimes we'll do stuff like 15% off, 20% off, 30 bucks off, 40 bucks off, so something like that. So sometimes you can actually get some pretty nice savings, so it doesn't hurt to kind of check it out, just kind of be monitoring it, right? So some cool little things right there. All right, so looks like some love right there. Kevin Daly goes, I love ROG apparel. Actually, I really love my stealth sweater, man. Thanks. Little fist bump right there, right? Let's go ahead and see right there. Yeah, so Johnny goes, yeah, touch helps a lot for sure. Yeah, I would agree. Like I said, if we're talking about that whole laptop scenario, for me, it's actually one of the biggest value adds I really love on the laptop, just being able to, like I said, my images, or I can kind of pinch and zoom. Sometimes I'm looking at PCBs or I'm looking at designs and I want to be able to kind of like just pinch and zoom, or I'm swiping through different content. I want to be able to do that. Sometimes I go to a larger video and then I want to be able to scroll through the video. I'm actually a really big fan of touch in a Windows-based environment, so I would agree. I like having that level of flexibility. Joss is going, are the sizes for North American man average size or agent sizes? I ordered some sweatshirts a while back. I'm 6 foot, 145 pounds, and I had to get XL. I usually wear large. Even medium in t-shirts. Yeah, so you're actually, I would say, pretty fit, right? 145, you're definitely on that leaner side. I'm about like 220. I'm about 6'2". So I kind of definitely know where you're coming from. I would say we don't have Asian sizes. These are, I would say, North American based sizes, but they do run, I'd say, a slightly more fitted base profile. Now, the team actually has a standard open return policy. So if sizing doesn't work, you can go ahead and return it and, exchange out to get whatever size it is. And we make that very easy. We give you kind of a label, you can ship it back and you're good to go. So it shouldn't be a difficult situation to hopefully be able to make sure that you get your sizing right. And we're going to continue to talk to our team to try to maybe give more guidance outside of even the review feedback as far as, fitment and making sure that people have a sense of picking the right size for them. My recommendation would be is that if you probably want to give yourself a little bit of more room, probably go to the size up. And there's always going to be a weird kind of balancing act, because I think for somebody like yourself too, I find that when you get over 6 foot, it's not necessarily about the width. Sometimes it's also about the length, right? Because sometimes I don't want to go into like an XL because an XL might be too wide, but what I'm really looking for is actually a little bit more torso length, right? And so that can sometimes be a tricky balancing act. But in that regard, we have had our team try to account for that. So I would say that these are American-based sizing, but they do have a little bit more of a fitted-based design silhouette than they would have just being kind of, let's say, larger, right, from that perspective. Although we have also attempted to bring in a product assortment that does account for even larger base sizes. So, you know, whether you're somebody, like I said, a little bit more maybe slim and compact to somebody that might have a little bit of a broader body size, we should be able to find a size that works well for you. All right, but that's a really great question, Jack. Thank you so much for asking that. And I will also touch with our team to hopefully try to make sure that they can maybe give a little bit more guidance or information on the product pages. Okay. All right. So that covers us there on the wall and to Apparel. So let's go ahead and wrap things up right here with an upgrade to Wi-Fi 6 and 2.5 gigabit network. So this is probably actually a pretty common kind of question that I get from a lot of people that kind of ask common questions like, well, what might be a good option for me to consider if I'm looking to make an upgrade? And so I thought this was actually not a bad time to kind of touch on this subject right here, especially with some of the new product that we just started putting to the market. So my first recommendation is actually going to be coming in with the Tough Gaming AX6000, which is actually very reasonably priced at $199. So in the past, to actually be able to get to 2.5 gigabit networking, you were probably closer to almost $300. So this is actually a really impressive kind of value proposition when you talk about being able to get to a high performing. So this is definitely better than a lot of the entry level, because keep in mind on the Wi-Fi 6 side, we have entry level routers that are coming in just about $100. So this is still definitely going to be more expensive than an entry, but the reason why I'm picking it is that it really gives you the best, I think, overall balance of price to performance to range to easy expansion to good specification support, right? So you're getting a really good foundation to kind of build your network on. So, and I think at a very reasonable price point. So $200 is going to net you a couple of really cool things here. One, we're going to get a unit that has dual. So not just one, but you're actually going to get two 2.5G ports on the unit, right? So when we talk about those ports, we're talking about the actual rear ports here on the back. So you can see you've got 2.5 gigabit WAN. So that means that even right now, maybe not right now, but maybe 2-3 years from now in the future, you upgrade to a faster ISP that's going to be faster than gigabit. Your router is going to need to be able to support that. So that means, cool, I've got that. My router already is going to give me that functionality. We have a dedicated, what's called optimized gaming port, which is pretty sweet. You can use this for literally your PC, your laptop, your gaming console. The router essentially already has like what's called a built-in quality of service. It's a packet priority optimization system. So normally you can do it through the app or you can do it through the web interface where you can go and you can prioritize devices. But if you don't even want to think about doing that, you can actually literally just plug in that gaming device into that port and we automatically prioritize the packets for gaming for that device on there. So that's kind of a little bit of a nice value add. We then have a secondary 2.5G port. So maybe if you've got like a 2.5G NAS or you've got another system that you're connecting to, again, you've got just a second port there to be able to give you more throughput. The other reason why I really like having the 2.5G ports is that, remember, all of our units have the ability to support what's called extensions. So that means that you can get a second router, right? And you can pair two of them together to be able to offer you broader coverage. Now, this is what is referred to as a dual band router. So if we go to the tech specs, that means that it's going to offer essentially two bands, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, right? Normally, if we take one of those bands away to connect the two routers together, we're essentially giving up one band, and that can still offer pretty good performance, especially for Wi-Fi 6. You can see even if we leave only open the Wi-Fi 6 on 2.4, that would be up to about 1,000 megabits. In reality, it's not really that. It probably is going to be closer to probably about 400 to maybe 500 megabits. So it's about half the quote-unquote theoretical throughput. But having that 2.5G port, if you could connect the two routers together through that backend connection, you could actually leave both of these available and have a really high-speed dual-band Wi-Fi 6-based environment with a really great experience. The other reason why I really like this model for a foundation is it's using one of the latest, fastest chipsets. So this is a 2 gigahertz quad-core SoC. Now, you might not have any idea what your router uses, but even if you go back probably about 3, 4, 5 years, it's very common to find routers that might only have like a 600 megahertz single-core chipset. Or maybe a 600 megahertz dual core chipset. So that 2 gigahertz quad core chipset really gives us great performance at being able to handle a high number of devices and also support a lot of new functions and features that we keep introducing in our firmware. So having that performance there is giving you kind of a roadmap for 3, 4, 5 years of developmental support, because we have a lot of memory, we have a lot of processing ability that as we add new features, the router can support it because it's got a fast enough chipset enabled in it. So that's actually a really important foundation to be able to give us a lot of benefit, right? There's a lot of other really great features and functions that we have that I'm not going to dive into, that our router product already has available to you. But I think, again, from a foundational standpoint, this is a really solid unit to be able to give you Wi-Fi 6, be able to let you stream and optimize your content very easily through the ASUS router app, has support for being able to run things like VPN on the router directly. It has our advanced security technologies built in, which are subscription free. If you're a parent or you want to be able to do, parental controls or management functionality, you have that. This is also a really cool feature that we've baked into a lot of our units, Instant Guard, along with that dual WAN support, where I talked about like you could take your iPhone or your Android phone and have a backup wireless connection that you could use through the USB port. But InstantGuard's pretty cool. It's like your own private VPN. You can install this on your phone, and even if you go to the airport, you can say, hey, I want to connect to my InstantGuard. And so what it will mean, it will actually pass everything through your internet connection through a point-to-point connection. So you can actually have a more safe environment that you have. So it's pretty cool because you can use it anywhere you're at. You just load the InstantGuard application in and you're good to go. So a lot of really cool stuff that we have here. I think very reasonable price point. This is going to be our foundation here. The Tough Gaming AX6000 coming in at $199. So what's going to be our step up? Why would we want to go to maybe another model up in the rung? The next one is going to be the RTX88 Pro. So this is also another kind of, I'd say, newer model that we have in our product stack. It's been out for a little bit, but it does replace a prior model that we had. So let me go ahead and bring this one up here. And we'll jump into this one. So give me 1 second right here. Here we go. Yep, RTX88 Pro. So this one's actually, I think, on promo right now. So I think it's like $30 off. So once you actually go to the site, you'll see actually the promo, because right now it'll still have it listed for like $300. So you're going to go up about $100 for this one, but there's actually going to be two models that I'll kind of break away here. So this one's pretty similar here: 2 GHz quad core, dual 2.5G. And similar level of kind of functionality in terms of kind of all the core feature set and use it. This is the reason why I said that the better foundational point is going to be, like I said, the Tough Gaming AX6000. But this unit does have a little bit more of an advanced, actually, internal topology, as well as also heatsink design. So if you talk about heavy sustained kind of throughput performance, this will have a little bit of an advantage in terms of that perspective. So I'm going to use this one as like a little kind of similar model, but a little bit of a pivot up. But I think the real big kind of pivot up, actually, oddly enough, is in the same price band, but still a little bit more than that Tough Gaming. And that's going to be the RTXE7800. So here, this one, we're going to have a bigger difference that we can kind of go through between the two. So let me bring this one up. This is the RXE7800. So for this model, if we compare this to the Tough Gaming, so let's go, let's kind of go put side by side here. And I think my Tough Gaming is right there. Yep. So let's go right there. Okay. Where did I have that one? I think it's it. Yeah, it's this one right here. That's fine. Give me 1 second. Let me adjust that. That's going to be the AXE7800. There we go. Okay. Okay. So this model is going to be a dual band, right? So coming in at 200, and here you're going to be coming in at 280, but there's a $20 promo right now, so it's coming in at 260. But even at 280, it's $80 more. Let's just say there. So dual band, this is going to be tri-band. So the big benefit here is, remember when we talked about mesh networking, you have 3 bands versus 2. The big thing with that Wi-Fi 6E is you're going to have a dedicated band for high-speed based devices. Now, if you don't have high-speed devices, you won't really notice any difference. But if you have like a new phone, if you have a new laptop, new motherboard, a mini PC, even some TVs that are now coming with Wi-Fi 6E, you could be undercutting the performance of those devices if you don't have a Wi-Fi 6E enabled router. So that is really where the benefit comes. And Wi-Fi 6E can legitimately offer you speeds that are faster than gigabit. You can literally get, you know, especially within about probably like 10 to 20 feet, you can be talking about like 800 to upwards of 1400 megabits. So remember, a gigabit Ethernet cable is going to be 1000 megabits. You could literally be getting 1000, 1100, 1200, 13, 1400 megabits through Wi-Fi 6E. So it's very, very impressive in terms of its overall throughput. So that's, to me, a really big value add that you're going to get there. You're also going to get the 2.5G port that's also going to be on the model that we just talked about here. So you get very similar level of functionality from this unit in terms of all those core elements. With the big thing, like I said, going up to tri-band, you're going to get the chipset is pretty similar. It's an advanced quad core. This one's technically a little bit faster. It's the 2 gigahertz versus this one with 1.7. But I'd rather trade off to be able to have, like I said, the Wi-Fi 6E band. You also have high-speed DDR4 memory that's going to be on here. Now, one thing to keep in mind is technically this model here, you'll notice this is going to be a 2.4 gigahertz 2x2. Okay, if we actually go over here, this model does have a little bit of an advantage on the 2.4. This is going to be a transmit receive 2.4 4x4. So you might be wondering, what is this transmit receive? With Wi-Fi 6, you actually have a technology that's called multi-user MIMO. It means actually you can use multiple transmit and receive antennas to essentially improve the number of devices that can be connected to. So generally, the higher this transmit receive configuration, the better, especially if you have more dense environments. So if you got lots of devices you're connecting to and are frequently kind of pinging the router and you want to be able to maintain a high level of performance, this is advantageous when you go up. So the most entry-level routers on the market you will find are 2x2 and then another 2x2. We already went up here. This is actually a 4x4 on the 2.4 and a 4x4 on the 5 gigahertz. Here we have 2x2, 4x4, and a 2x2. But we're still getting a much higher level of performance because with Wi-Fi 6E, it's not just also the number of transmit and receives. There's also improved bandwidth because you have what's called a bigger channel. So you operate at higher channels with higher frequency. But technically, if you had a lot of 2.4 gigahertz devices, you could maybe have a better experience here. So it is just kind of something to keep in mind. It's not super critical, but I'm trying to kind of give you some insight in terms of some of the differentiation here. Otherwise, pretty straightforward. And when we take a look here at the port configuration, this one is also going to be a little bit different, where it's got just that one 2.5 gigabit, right? Versus, remember, this one has dual 2.5 gigabit. But here, the big thing is, do you want to essentially be able to jump up to that Wi-Fi 6E, right? And have that tri-band level of connectivity? Because otherwise, everything else is going to be pretty similar between the two. All right. Let me quickly see if anything kind of came up right there. So Michael goes, where is 8x8? We're actually going to talk about 8x8. But keep in mind that most devices, the vast majority of everything on the market from a client standpoint, especially when you're talking about like your TVs, your IoT devices, your phones, your laptops, everything is generally either like a 1x1, a 1x2, or a 2x2. It's very rare to get any clients that are 3x3 or 4x4. And for Wi-Fi 6, they pretty much are non-existent. They pretty much don't exist unless you're doing router to router. But there can be a benefit to still going to higher number of spatial streams, especially if you're wanting to be able to connect to a more dense number of devices. Okay, and so we will talk about that in a moment here. So where was that? We were at, okay, so the AXE 7800. So essentially we went up, right, from the AX 6000 being at 200 to then kind of like our next kind of upgrade recommendations were the AXE 7800 and the AX 88 Pro, right, being at kind of let's say between like 260 to like 300. So our kind of best model that I would recommend, without getting into the super expensive models, right, although 350 starts to definitely get pretty expensive, but you're going to get a lot here. So we're going to talk about this model, which will be the the AX 89X. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look and see how this model stacks up here. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring this one up, and we'll kind of just see how we can kind of do this with three of these units here. Okay, so this is going to be the RTX 89X. So this is going to be a total 12 stream router. And we're going to be stepping up quite a bit when we go to this kind of spec of unit. So what do we get when we go over here? So this one is going to give us quite a bit of things. One is you're going to have 3 bands. So you will have 3 bands on this. This will be a tri-band model. Now, technically, it won't be a Wi-Fi 6E one, but you'll still have 3 bands. So you have a dedicated band for high-speed based Wi-Fi devices, which is important to be able to maximize their throughput. But there are going to be definitely some performance advantages that this unit will offer. You'll see that this model, within a 2-band configuration, will still offer you a higher level of performance across many devices because it's going to be operating at an 8x8 configuration for its 5 gigahertz. So if we go over here and again we kind of compare, you'll see you got 4x4, 2x2, 4x4, 2x2, and here you're gonna have 4x4 and 8x8. So you're gonna get really, really great performance and really great coverage for your 2.4 gigahertz devices, which is really important because probably most of your devices in your home are actually probably 2.4. A lot of cameras are 2.4. All the IoT devices are 2.4. A lot of stuff is 2.4. So if you really want great stability and coverage and performance from 2.4, and even things like laptops, motherboards, a lot of other stuff that might still be at further range, it's probably not going to be on the 5 gigahertz band you're connecting to. It's 2.4. It's really nice to have the 4x4 on the 2.4. But then 8x8 on 5 is going to give us really great throughput and performance for that 5 gigahertz based devices. We're also going to have the fastest chipset performance here, where we can see where we had 2 gigahertz, 1.7, here we go up to 2.2, and we even have more memory. The more memory and the faster processing, again, helps us to deal with even more number of devices, especially if they're simultaneously being connected to. So I'm a big fan of this one. In addition, in terms of the connectivity, this one is going to come with 2 10G ports on the unit. Plus, if you're somebody that's really a big fan of wired Ethernet connectivity, it has something that's pretty rare, which is going to be a rich level of connections for the actual I/O. The I/O, right? Respectively, the inputs and outputs on here, where you can actually see that this model has 8 ports on here. So you've got 4 ports there, and then you have 4 ports here. And on the other side, I don't know if it shows the image right here. On this side, this is where you have 2 more USB ports. And also, the faster the speed of the chipset, generally the faster the performance for USB. But here you have your 2 10G ports. So you can actually see it's got a huge number of port connections available to you, right? So if you got your WAN, then you've got your 10 base T, and then you have your 10 FPS plus that's also on here. So this one's very, very rich. Really cool if you have maybe something like a media bridge kind of environment where you've got maybe like a TV, multiple gaming consoles, a PC, indoor camera, and you all wanted to wire those into that switch. You've got 8 ports, because most of the time most routers are usually going to give you like 4 ports. So this model gives you a lot of flexibility here, where you're going to have that 8x8, you're going to have that fast chipset, you got 8 ports, you got 2 USB ports, you got 2 10G ports on there, and all the other kind of same functions or features that are introduced on there. So of course we have other models that even go into way more advanced features and functions and have more to offer. But I think, again, if we're just talking about trying to get into Wi-Fi 6 and 2.5 gigabit networking, although of course this one steps up into 10G, right? These are kind of my good, better, best offering that I would recommend right now. And keep in mind that if you needed more coverage, this model already, an AX6000, is going to offer users a lot of times the very, very good level of coverage. You're probably talking 2,500 plus to probably like 2,800 square feet, right? So this is already pretty good for most users. They don't really need a mesh networking environment. But if you ever needed more coverage, you could always pair this again with another router and even get more coverage. Same thing, you could pair this with another router and get more coverage. Here, you could pair this with another router and get more coverage. Okay, so that is kind of my good, better, best offering right there for kind of a 2.5 and Wi-Fi 6 base configuration, with also giving a little bit of pivot into Wi-Fi 6E, or also going into really dense kind of configurations, right? Jenny goes, our 4x4x4x4 would be really fancy. Yeah, I mean, you can start to get into some of the other kind of even higher models. Again, we have models that are even higher than this that start to go into more varied kind of configurations. That's also why you even start to have even more antennas on kind of varying models. But the reality is, for most users, they generally don't need so many kind of 4x4s. Really 2x2 for, I'd say, about like 70%, 75% of users is actually more than enough and will be more than enough than they ever need. But there might be some specific users based on the environment, the number of devices that they have, that really having a 4x4 based transmission receive configuration is preferred. And then 8x8 would really be kind of that next level where you really not only want to maintain a high number of devices that are consistently connected, but you also really want to make sure that the performance of those Wi-Fi 6 devices is really strong. So almost imagine it kind of being where, like, I don't know, maybe you had like a really big family environment where it's like brother, sister, mom, dad, and brother, sister, and mom, right? They all got like Wi-Fi 6 phones and they're all streaming content simultaneously at the same time, high bit rate, and they really want to maintain a big performance and benefit. That's where when you could start to see like saying, hey, maybe going even from like a 4x4 to like an 8x8 could be more advantageous, right? So JY goes, how does this AX89X compare to the AX16000? So the AX16000 is higher end actually in quite a bit of configurations. I was getting ready to wrap this scene here, but I can go ahead and just show you if you wanted to see like what would it look like, because the Rapture actually goes into giving you quite a number of other elements that that model doesn't have. So we can go ahead and kind of just show that. So like again, if you were to go even like higher level and you say like, well, what would I get by going to the next model? So let's go ahead and just quickly look there, because pretty much short of the Wi-Fi 7 units, the Rapture is going to be stepping you up to pretty much just about flagship level right now, right? So let's go ahead and bring up the Rapture. Okay, so JY goes, so how does that compare? So the first thing that we're going to see is the switch configuration is going to be a little bit different. All the kind of core features are going to be very, very, very similar. But the chipset is going to be one of the first biggest things. This is using actually a different chipset. These are different chipset vendors. And there are some benefits to sometimes different chipset vendors in terms of working with certain client devices. So you have different vendors. Sometimes they have Qualcomm, you have Broadcom. Take for instance, in terms of chipset manufacturers, you also have MediaTek that can make these chips. But if we take a look here, the first thing is going to actually be this processor. Now this is already very, very performant, 2.2 gigahertz, but this is actually a newer generation chipset performance, and actually I would say here this would actually be advantageous. But this is not just the chipset that differs in terms of the QAM modulation support, but actually the memory. This is 1 gigabyte worth of memory. This has actually twice the amount of actually memory that's on here. The other thing is that this, of course, is going to be a dual band. Now it's dual band, but it has 8 transmit receive on that 5 gigahertz. But this is actually a quad band based router. So this has a guaranteed 6 gigahertz band designation. Here, for your 6 gigahertz devices, you're asking them to use that 5 gigahertz band. The disadvantage of that is going to come down to kind of maximum throughput technically, where the throughput that exists here and for these bands could actually be higher on this router. So if you have a prioritization for Wi-Fi 6E based devices, you would get generally better speeds that are going to exist here. You also have more flexibility for designating kind of bandwidth, right? Because you could essentially either use something that's called Smart Connect, where the router will automatically define the device for the specific band, or you could designate, hey, I want all my devices to connect to this 6 gigahertz band, to this 5 gigahertz band, to this low speed 5 gigahertz band, and to this 2.4 gigahertz. Plus, if you did mesh networking, again, you could have one of those bands connect the 2 nodes together and you would still have 3 bands exposed. So that's a really big benefit within a quad band based router. This, like I said, still gets you pretty close to this level of performance with that 8x8 though in the 5 gigahertz, because keep in mind, you're going to see right here, the Wi-Fi 6 is still going to peak out to a peak of that 4800 megabits. And you're going to still see even here on that 6, that's going to be equal there, right? Where it's still going to be, because they're 4x4s, right? You're going to be able to go up to 48. So this is still pretty damn impressive in terms of the performance they can equal here. But here you're going to be able to get generally higher performance with Wi-Fi 6E, especially devices. And like I said, more flexibility because of the quad band. You also have more memory. The configuration is also a little bit different here in terms of the ports, where here you have the 2 10G ports. This one has a dedicated 2.5G WAN port, but then it also has the 2 10G ports, right? But it doesn't have a total of 8 ports, right? So it kind of just comes down to like which one, again, are you kind of wanting to try to kind of prioritize, right? I will tell you though, from a performance perspective, this one will generally offer a higher level of, like I said, throughput and performance. especially for, like I said, Wi-Fi 6E based devices. But this is why you can see where I kind of pivoted to this one as saying my best, as opposed to this is a great model, but it is more expensive. And unless I really needed quad band, which very few users really need quad band unless they're multi-segment out their environment, of why I kind of went default with the 89X. Now, I will say that there is something that's a little bit harder to kind of break down that could be a value that some chipsets see better developmental support in terms of firmware development from third parties, as well as kind of community development, and even sometimes the amount of time it takes us to introduce new features. And so the chipset that we utilize on the Rapture allows us to have faster iterative development. So you'll see more advanced firmware features and functions come out here than you would see actually come out on the 89X. There's also other things like if you were to run like third-party firmware, like Merlin's WRT firmware, you're going to see that more supported here on something like the Rapture than you would on the 89X. Okay. Yeah. So hopefully that gives you some context of why I kind of broke down the kind of perspective. Because again, also pricing wise, you can see where if you break down the pricing, right, this, of course, on the Rapture, that quad band, you're going to be paying quite a bit of a bump up for the quad band if you want that from a price point. Because this is, like I said, $350. But if you kind of understand where I was trying to kind of go from a value proposition, you actually save quite a bit comparatively going with this 89X. If you wanted 10G, you wanted an advanced quad core, you want a lot of rich connectivity, you want advanced features like, you know, a VPN on router, you want, you know, a dual WAN support, you want all this kind of cool stuff, because here you're going to be jumping up over $500, right? And so you can see, do you really want to spend that extra 150? Because even if you wanted dedicated clients, you could go buy like a Wi-Fi 6E adapter plus this and still be lower than the price point of this, right? So it just kind of comes down to kind of balancing out, you know, the price points, right? So Michael notes, yeah, $349 is a steal for the 89X. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really great price point. Hey, Chorus, happy to have you here, man. Thanks for joining the stream, right? Yeah, so Michael's not, yeah, so that's actually what I was talking about, right, with the quad band, right? So the AXC 6 gigahertz with certain client chips, super. The first 5 gigahertz is super fast. The second 5 gigahertz is less speed. You want to think about your first 5 gigahertz band, because 5 gigahertz has existed all the way since AC, right? So you might have just general 5 gigahertz devices. You know, it could be maybe an older laptop. It could be like a console. Maybe you got like an old PlayStation or Xbox that they might have dual band, but it's not like a high speed 5 gigahertz band. It's just 5 gigahertz. That actually generally also has a much lower range, right, than 2.4, right? So yeah, kind of having the 5 gigahertz and the 6 gigahertz is generally, it's like there's a low speed 5 gigahertz and then there's like a high speed 5 gigahertz. And then that 6 gigahertz band is really for the fastest devices that exist on the market. And that's generally going to be for your 6 gigahertz is pretty much just Wi-Fi 6E. Wi-Fi 6E, and of course, forthcoming Wi-Fi 7 clients can actually also benefit from a Wi-Fi 6E enabled router, because those devices will generally also be operating at a higher band in terms of the speed. So even though you won't get the full speed of a Wi-Fi 7 device on a Wi-Fi 6E based router, you're still kind of getting much better performance for that device than you would running that Wi-Fi 6E or Wi-Fi 7 device on just a standard Wi-Fi 6 router, right? Yeah. Okay. So that ultimately wraps that up. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of perspective. Again, if you're looking to upgrade, my recommendation goes kind of good, better, best, right? So we got the Tough Gaming AX6000 coming at $200. I think, again, probably the overall best value that we offer in our overall lineup with two 2.5 gigabyte LAN ports, right? Has rich firmware support, has a dedicated gaming port, is 4x4 on 2.4 gigahertz and 4x4 on 5 gigahertz, right? And like I said, those two 2.5 gigabit ports that are on there, great in terms of flexibility. Plus it supports AI mesh. So if you want to be able to add a second router to add additional coverage, this is a really, really great foundation. Next step up, probably is, like I said the RTX88 Pro. I think probably for most people probably would be the AXC7800. This gets you up into tri-band. So you're going to have 3 bands with Wi-Fi 6E, right? So especially if you've got latest generation devices, you'll get even faster performance. You get 2.5G in terms of the LAN port that's going to be on there. But keep in mind, this is not a 4x4 for the 2.4 gigahertz, and it's only one single 2.5 port. So really the value add comes most if you want that Wi-Fi 6E or you want the flexibility of having tri-band. And then, like I said, that best offering, that 89X, which steps up to being a dual band model, but being an 8x8 configuration on 5 gigahertz gives it a huge level of performance for 5 gigahertz enabled devices, and also outstanding performances for really, really dense home environments. So again, that's really going to be for users that are probably upwards of like 40 devices in their house, or at least probably heavily running, I'd probably say at least like 5 to 8 plus devices, heavy bandwidth simultaneously, right? Like all at one time. And also where you get the two 10G ports on this model with a total of 8 LAN ports also on here. So lots of Ethernet functionality on there. All right, guys, that wraps up our stream. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of foundation of stuff. Next week's stream, we'll be finally bringing back the PC DIY Builder Spotlight. So I've been curating, kind of going through the ones that we have left in the bank, of course, along with new builds. So PC DIY Builder Spotlight, if you guys don't know, it's essentially where we love to take a look at your guys' builds that you submit from the community. So whether it's mini ITX, micro ATX, ATX water-cooled, air-cooled, it doesn't matter. We'd love being able to show them and talk about them in the stream. So we're going to have the PC DIY Builder Spotlight come back in. And of course, any of the new latest and greatest things that we have coming up for ASUS, we'll go ahead and talk about it in that stream as well. So if anybody else has anything else that they're following up on, feel free to go ahead and check us out in the ASUS PCDIY group. If you're checking us out on YouTube or Facebook, the link is in the description below. Great community, over 45,000 members. You can ask anything about ASUS related there. And if we don't cover it there in the group, we can definitely then follow up in the forthcoming stream. So with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your Friday, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye, guys. Take care.